The rejection came before the coffee on the receptionist's desk had even cooled, before the rain on Ethan Walker's jacket had time to darken the fabric completely, and before hope had a chance to fully settle in his chest. He had walked into the glass tower with the quiet courage of a man who had nothing left to lose, carrying a thin folder, a worn resume, and the invisible weight of being a single father in a world that rarely slowed down for men like him. The moment the interview ended, the verdict was already written on the polite smiles and distant eyes, and Ethan felt that familiar sting, the one that whispered he was not enough, not again, not here either. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one moment can change everything, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Ethan's life had been reduced to early mornings and sleepless nights ever since his wife passed away 3 years earlier, leaving him alone with a 6-year-old daughter named Lily and a heart that never quite healed. Every day began before sunrise, packing lunches, tying shoelaces, and pretending everything was okay so Lily would smile before school. Every night ended with him staring at the ceiling, calculating bills, replaying interviews, and wondering how long optimism could survive on empty promises. He had once been a respected systems analyst, the kind of employee who fixed problems quietly and stayed late without being asked, but gaps in employment and the unspoken bias against single parents had slowly pushed him to the margins. The company he had just interviewed with was called Harrington Dynamics, a tech giant known for ruthless efficiency and a CEO who demanded perfection. The lobby alone felt like a different universe, filled with polished marble, soft music, and people who walked like they owned tomorrow. Ethan sat through the interview answering questions about commitment, flexibility, and availability, knowing each answer carried the risk of sounding like a liability instead of an asset. When he mentioned he was a single father, the room shifted subtly, as if an invisible door had closed. They thanked him for his time, and he thanked them for theirs, even though both sides knew how it would end. As Ethan stood to leave, clutching the folder that felt heavier than before, something unusual happened. An alarm cut through the calm of the office floor, not loud but urgent, followed by a ripple of tension moving through the glass corridors. Screens flickered, keyboards froze, and the hum of confidence turned into a low murmur of confusion. Somewhere above them, a critical system had failed, one that controlled real-time financial operations, and the company was bleeding millions with every passing minute. The CEO, Jonathan Harrington, was known as a man who never panicked, yet today even his sharp composure cracked. Engineers rushed back and forth, phones pressed to ears, faces pale as they tried to trace the problem. This was not just a technical glitch, it was the kind of failure that could shatter trust, stocks, and reputations. The room Ethan was leaving suddenly became the center of a quiet storm, and he felt it the way a seasoned sailor feels a shift in the wind. Ethan paused near a frozen monitor by the exit, instinctively glancing at the cascading error messages. Years of experience stirred awake inside him, the part of him that used to come alive in moments like this. He noticed something the others were missing, a small inconsistency buried beneath layers of code, a conflict between a recent update and an old security protocol. His heart started pounding, not from fear, but from recognition. He knew this problem. He had solved something like it before, long ago, during a midnight shift when no one else stayed. Without making a scene, Ethan asked for permission to take a closer look, his voice steady but his hands slightly trembling. There was hesitation, skepticism, and more than a few dismissive glances, but desperation has a way of softening pride. Someone nodded. Someone stepped aside. And in that narrow window, Ethan leaned in, fingers moving with calm precision, his mind blocking out the world as if Lily were waiting for him at home and this was the only way forward. In seconds that felt like hours, he isolated the fault, rewrote a fragment of code, and rerouted the process just long enough to stabilize the system. The alarms stopped. The screens refreshed. The financial bleed slowed, then ceased entirely. A silence followed, thick and disbelieving, before the room erupted into controlled chaos again, this time with relief instead of panic. Engineers stared at the monitor, then at Ethan, as if he had stepped out of a shadow they never noticed. Jonathan Harrington arrived moments later, his eyes scanning the room, assessing damage, searching for answers. When he was told that the crisis had been resolved by the man who had just been rejected minutes earlier, something shifted behind his composed exterior. He looked at Ethan not as a liability, not as a risk, but as a solution. For the first time that day, Ethan felt seen. The hours that followed blurred together. Meetings were cancelled. Questions were asked. Coffee was replaced. Ethan explained what he had done, how he had seen the problem, and why it mattered. There was no arrogance in him, only a quiet confidence shaped by years of solving problems without applause. He spoke of systems the way a caregiver speaks of a child, with patience, understanding, and respect for complexity. And slowly, the walls around him began to crumble. Jonathan Harrington was a man who valued results above all else, but he was also a man who had lost something once, long before success hardened him. Watching Ethan, he saw not just talent, but resilience, the kind that could not be taught in boardrooms or business schools. He saw a father who had learned to fix broken things because giving up was never an option. By the end of the day, the rejection letter that had been mentally drafted was torn apart. Ethan was offered a position, not out of pity, but out of recognition. A role with flexibility, respect, and the chance to rebuild not just a career, but a life. When Ethan walked out of Harrington Dynamics that evening, the rain had stopped, and the city lights reflected off the pavement like a promise he had almost forgotten how to believe in. At home, Lily ran into his arms the moment he opened the door, her laughter washing away the exhaustion of the day. He held her tighter than usual, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the weight of fear finally lift from his shoulders. He did not tell her everything, not yet, but he told her that tomorrow would be better, and for the first time, he knew it was true. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan proved again and again that second chances, when given to the right people, multiply in value. He worked hard, but he also left on time to attend school plays and bedtime stories. He fixed systems, mentored younger engineers, and slowly changed the culture around him, showing that dedication did not have to come at the cost of humanity. Even Jonathan Harrington found himself reconsidering old beliefs, learning that strength sometimes looks like asking for help, and leadership sometimes means listening. The story of the single dad who fixed the CEO's biggest problem in seconds spread quietly through the company, then beyond it, not as a legend, but as a reminder. A reminder that behind every resume is a life, behind every gap is a story, and behind every rejection might be someone who could save the day if given the chance. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own struggles or someone you love, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Your engagement tells us that stories of hope still matter, and that kindness is worth believing in. Before this ends, please comment below what part of Ethan's journey moved you the most, or share a moment when someone believed in you when you needed it most. Ethan never became famous, and he never needed to. His victory was quieter and deeper, found in the steady rhythm of a life rebuilt, in the knowledge that his worth was never defined by rejection, and in the simple truth that sometimes, the world changes not with noise, but with one ordinary person refusing to give up when it matters most.